Imagine this. You wake up one morning and look in the mirror, only to realize that the person staring back at you has been living a lie. Not a lie of deception, but a lie of profound ignorance about the most fundamental force that drives your existence, shapes your relationships, and determines whether the world sees you as powerful or powerless. You hold within yourself an energy so potent, so sacred, that ancient civilizations built entire philosophies around its preservation. Yet in our modern world, you've been conditioned to treat it as nothing more than a biological function, a momentary release, a fleeting pleasure, a disposable commodity. What if I told you that this single misconception is the invisible thread connecting every area where you feel powerless, disrespected, or unfulfilled? In this video, we are going to explore why mastering your energy, your essence, and your self-control is the key to unlocking respect, purpose, and inner strength. Stay with me until the end because the final revelation is the most powerful of all, one that may change forever the way you see yourself and your life. Before we dive in, I want to invite you to be part of this journey with me. If these reflections resonate with you, make sure to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and comment your thoughts below. Together, we will explore wisdom that has been whispered by sages, confirmed by science, and rediscovered by men and women who are walking the path of self-mastery. And I promise you, what you are about to learn can alter the very foundation of how you live. The truth revealed in our source material cuts through the comfortable illusions we live by. Until you value your semen, no one will value you. This isn't merely about sexuality or abstinence. It's about recognizing that the way you treat your most vital essence reflects how you treat your entire existence. It's about understanding that respect, power, and purpose are not given to you by the world. They are radiations of the discipline you cultivate within. Consider this paradox. We live in an age where men are told to express themselves freely, to indulge their desires without restraint, to embrace instant gratification as a form of liberation. Yet depression rates among men have skyrocketed. Anxiety plagues the modern male psyche. Relationships feel hollow and transactional. Professional success feels meaningless. The promised freedom of indulgence has delivered only a deeper form of bondage, one where men feel perpetually empty, constantly seeking external validation, forever chasing something they cannot name. What if this emptiness isn't a psychological disorder, but a spiritual rebellion? What if your soul is rejecting the very lifestyle you've been taught to embrace? Our exploration suggests something profound, that the careless disposal of your life force creates an invisible wound that bleeds into every aspect of your being. Your confidence, your clarity, your ability to command respect, your capacity to attract genuine connection, your power to manifest your deepest ambitions. But here lies the most unsettling question of all. If you cannot command the most basic impulse within yourself, how can you hope to command anything else in your life? If you treat your own essence as worthless, why would anyone else treat you as valuable? The world is not blind to energy. People sense, on a level deeper than conscious thought, whether you are a man who honors what is sacred within himself or one who squanders it without awareness. This is not about moral judgment or religious doctrine. This is about energy, presence, and the invisible laws that govern human attraction and respect. Think of the men you most admire, those who carry themselves with unshakable confidence, whose words carry weight, whose very presence commands attention. Do they strike you as men controlled by their impulses, or as men who have learned to harness and direct their vital force? The ancient Taoists understood this. They spoke of preserving the life essence, not out of prudishness, but out of wisdom, knowing that this energy, when conserved and cultivated, transforms into something far greater than momentary pleasure. It becomes focus. It becomes magnetism. It becomes the very foundation of a life lived with purpose and power. Yet we have forgotten this wisdom, dismissing it as outdated while simultaneously wondering why modern life feels so hollow, why relationships feel so superficial, why success feels so empty. We have been taught to leak our energy in 1,000 different ways and then wonder why we feel perpetually drained, perpetually seeking something we cannot find in the external world. This is where our journey begins, not with easy answers, but with harder questions that will force you to examine everything you thought you knew about power, purpose, and what it truly means to be a man who commands respect in a world that has forgotten how to give it. Why has this sacred understanding been so thoroughly erased from modern consciousness? The answer lies buried beneath layers of cultural conditioning, psychological manipulation, and philosophical confusion that have collectively severed us from ancient wisdom about the nature of human energy and power. Sigmund Freud, despite his controversial theories, understood something profound about sexual energy, that it was the foundational drive behind all human motivation and creativity. Yet modern psychology has twisted this insight, suggesting that suppression leads inevitably to neurosis, that restraint equals repression. This fundamental misunderstanding has created generations of men who believe that indulgence equals psychological health, when in reality, they have confused liberation with enslavement. Carl Jung offered a more nuanced perspective, recognizing that sexual energy wasn't something to be mindlessly released or rigidly suppressed, but transformed. He spoke of individuation, the process by which a person integrates all aspects of the self into a coherent whole. Jung understood that the man who learns to transmute his primal energies into higher expressions becomes psychologically complete, while the man who merely indulges remains fragmented, forever seeking external completion for his internal void. Friedrich Nietzsche declared that he who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. The philosopher understood that mastery over oneself precedes mastery over one's circumstances. Yet our culture has inverted this wisdom, promising men that they can achieve greatness while remaining slaves to their basest impulses. A contradiction that explains why so many feel simultaneously overstimulated and undernourished. The source material reveals how this psychological fragmentation manifests in everyday life. Imagine a man who wastes his energy endlessly, who gives away his vitality without thought or discipline. Do you think such a man will radiate authority, clarity, or presence? Or will he be seen as fragile, distracted, even invisible in the eyes of the world? Viktor Frankl, survivor of Nazi concentration camps and founder of logotherapy, observed that man's primary drive is not pleasure, as Freud claimed, or power, as Adler suggested, but meaning. Yet how can a man discover his meaning when he cannot even command his most basic urges? How can he serve a higher purpose when he is perpetually serving lower impulses? Arthur Schopenhauer recognized that desire is the root of suffering, not because desire itself is evil, but because unconscious desire creates an endless cycle of craving and temporary satisfaction that leads nowhere. The wise man, Schopenhauer argued, learns to observe his desires rather than be controlled by them. He transforms the will to live into the will to transcend. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of our modern conditioning is how it has weaponized shame against discipline. Men are taught to feel ashamed of restraint, as if self-control were somehow unnatural or psychologically damaging. We live in a society that celebrates every form of indulgence while mocking every form of mastery. This psychological warfare has convinced men that their weakness is actually strength, that their enslavement is actually freedom. The document emphasizes this tragic irony. The modern world may laugh at such ideas, dismissing them as outdated or extreme, but ask yourself honestly, has the path of indulgence, distraction, and waste truly made people stronger, more fulfilled, or more respected? Or has it left many feeling hollow, anxious, and powerless? Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that man is condemned to be free, forced to choose his essence through his actions. Yet, how can a man choose his essence when he cannot even choose his responses to his most primitive urges? How can he create himself authentically when he is constantly recreating patterns of unconscious reactivity? The hidden problem is not that men have desires, it is that they have forgotten the difference between having desires and being had by them. This amnesia has created a generation of men who mistake stimulation for vitality, distraction for engagement, and consumption for creation. But recognizing the problem is only the beginning. The deeper question remains: what are the true consequences of this mass forgetting, and how do they shape every aspect of our lived experience? The consequences of energy mismanagement ripple outward like invisible shockwaves, reshaping reality in ways so subtle yet profound that most men never connect their daily struggles to this fundamental betrayal of their vital essence. What appears to be separate problems, lack of respect, failed relationships, creative stagnation, spiritual emptiness are actually symptoms of a single underlying disorder: the systematic depletion of life force. Consider the neurological reality behind this ancient wisdom. Every time you wastefully discharge your vital energy, your brain experiences a complex cascade of neurochemical changes. Dopamine receptors become desensitized, requiring ever greater stimulation to achieve the same satisfaction. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, decision-making, and impulse control, weakens its regulatory power. Meanwhile, stress hormones like cortisol flood your system, creating a state of chronic anxiety that masquerades as normal modern life. But the psychological consequences run even deeper. Our source material reveals how your psychology is shaped by the patterns you reinforce every day. Every time you indulge in the easy release of energy without purpose, your mind learns a dangerous lesson that comfort is more important than growth, that pleasure is more valuable than discipline. This creates what psychologists call learned helplessness, a condition where repeated experiences of powerlessness condition the mind to expect powerlessness even when control is possible. The man who cannot command his sexual impulses unconsciously programs himself to believe he cannot command anything else. His career stagnates because he lacks the sustained focus for long-term projects. His relationships fail because he radiates neediness rather than self-sufficiency. His creative pursuits remain unfulfilled because he has trained his nervous system to seek immediate gratification rather than delayed mastery. The cognitive bias, known as temporal discounting, explains why this pattern becomes self-reinforcing. Each act of impulsive energy release strengthens neural pathways that prioritize immediate rewards over long-term benefits. The brain literally rewires itself for weakness, creating a biological momentum toward further weakness. What feels like a harmless release is actually a vote cast for a diminished future self. But perhaps most devastating is how this energy depletion affects your social reality. Human beings possess an unconscious ability to sense vitality in others. Mirror neurons fire in response to the energy states of those around us. When you consistently leak your life force, others unconsciously register you as depleted, unstable, unsafe. They may not be able to articulate why, but they instinctively withdraw their trust, their attraction, their respect. The source material observes that a man who values himself radiates something invisible but undeniable. His eyes are clearer, his handshake is firmer, his words carry weight. People listen when he speaks, not because he shouts, but because there is gravity in his presence. This gravitational metaphor is more literal than metaphorical. Quantum physics suggests that consciousness itself may influence physical reality at the subatomic level. When your energy is scattered and depleted, you emit a frequency of chaos. When your energy is conserved and directed, you emit a frequency of coherence. Others respond to these frequencies below the threshold of conscious awareness, creating the mysterious phenomenon we call charisma, presence, or natural authority. Cultural conditioning compounds these individual consequences. We live in a society designed to harvest and monetize human attention and energy. Every advertisement, every digital platform, every entertainment medium is engineered to fragment your focus and drain your vitality. The man who cannot preserve his most precious essence becomes easy prey for systems designed to consume his life force for profit. Yet most men remain unconscious of this energetic vampirism, wondering why they feel perpetually exhausted despite living more comfortable lives than any humans in history. They have become unwitting participants in their own diminishment, mistaking symptoms for causes, treating effects while ignoring the source. But what if there were another way? What if the prison door has been unlocked all along? The path to liberation begins with a radical act of rebellion, not against society, not against nature, but against the unconscious patterns that have held you captive. This rebellion requires you to do something that modern culture considers almost heretical: to value what is sacred within yourself more than what is immediately pleasurable. But this is not the rebellion of denial or repression. As our source material makes clear, this is not about denying your humanity, it is about mastering it. Carl Jung once explained that repression leads to shadow, but transformation leads to wholeness. The goal is not to suppress your energy, but to transmute it, to take what is raw and primal and direct it into what is purposeful and transcendent. The first step in this transformation is recognition. You must become conscious of the unconscious. Every urge, every impulse, Every moment when your body calls for release becomes an opportunity for choice rather than automatic reaction. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, observing his thoughts and impulses with the detachment of a scientist studying phenomena. He understood that the space between stimulus and response is where freedom lives. Ancient warriors knew this secret. Samurai cultivated sexual discipline not from moral prudishness, but from tactical necessity. They recognized that a warrior who could not command his most basic urges could not be trusted to command anything else, not his sword, not his strategy, not his honor. Modern science confirms this ancient wisdom. Self-control operates like a muscle that grows stronger with use and weaker with neglect. Consider the revolutionary figures throughout history who embodied this principle. Nikola Tesla, the genius whose inventions powered the modern world, practiced lifelong celibacy, believing that sexual energy could be transformed into intellectual and creative force. Leonardo da Vinci channeled his vital essence into art, science, and innovation that still inspires centuries later. These men understood something profound, that the same energy that creates life can be redirected to create legacy. The practical rebellion begins with small acts of conscious restraint. When the urge arises, instead of automatic surrender, you pause, you breathe. You ask yourself, does this action serve my highest self or my lowest impulse? Each moment of conscious choice rewires your neural pathways, strengthening the prefrontal cortex's dominion over the limbic system's demands. But true mastery goes beyond mere abstinence. As the source material reveals, when you learn to respect your inner energy, you radiate something undeniable. Your posture changes, your voice deepens, your mind sharpens. You begin to attract respect, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. This transformation occurs on multiple levels simultaneously. Physically, preserved vital energy increases testosterone naturally, enhances immune function, and improves overall vitality. Mentally, the discipline required to master sexual impulses strengthens willpower across all areas of life. Emotionally, you develop what psychologists call emotional regulation, the ability to feel without being controlled by feelings. The rebellion spreads into every domain. Your relationship with time changes. Instead of seeking immediate gratification, you develop comfort with delayed satisfaction. Your relationship with work transforms projects that once seemed impossible become achievable through sustained focus. Your social dynamics shift. Neediness dissolves into self-sufficiency, creating the magnetic quality that draws others toward you. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote that, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." But he might have added, "What I do not surrender to makes me master." Every moment of conscious restraint is a vote for your future self, a deposit in the bank of your potential. The most profound rebellion is this: choosing to become conscious in an unconscious world, choosing discipline in an indulgent age, choosing to value your essence when everything around you encourages its waste. But even this rebellion points towards something greater, a final truth that reframes everything we think we know about power, purpose, and human potential. We have arrived at the threshold of the deepest truth, one that transcends psychology, philosophy, and even spirituality to touch something fundamental about the nature of human existence itself. Everything we have explored the hidden problem, the unseen consequences. The path of rebellion has been leading to this singular revelation that will forever alter how you understand your place in the cosmic order. The ultimate truth is this: valuing your semen is not really about semen at all. It is about recognizing that you are not merely a biological organism driven by chemical impulses, but a conscious being capable of transmuting the raw materials of existence into something transcendent. Your vital essence is not just bodily fluid, it is concentrated life force, creative potential in its purest form, the very substance from which universes are born. Our source material reveals this profound insight. Valuing your semen is ultimately about valuing your life. It is about recognizing that your time, your energy, your essence are sacred gifts, and that wasting them is not only disrespect to yourself, but to the very purpose for which you were born. Consider the staggering implications of this realization. Every act of conscious retention becomes an act of creation, not of another human being, but of a higher version of yourself. Every moment of disciplined restraint becomes a moment of conscious evolution. You are literally choosing to redirect the force that creates life toward creating the life you were meant to live. This is why the ancient Taoists spoke of cultivating the elixir of life, why yogis described raising the kundalini energy, why Christian mystics pursued divine union through chastity. They understood that sexual energy, when consciously directed, becomes spiritual energy. They recognized that the same force responsible for physical procreation could be responsible for psychological and spiritual procreation, the birth of your authentic self. But the revelation goes deeper still. When you truly embody this discipline, you discover that you are not struggling against your nature, you are finally aligning with it. You realize that the constant craving for release was never actually about physical need, but about spiritual hunger. The emptiness you tried to fill through discharge was the soul's cry for genuine fulfillment, for purpose, for meaning that transcends the merely personal. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote that the individual who cannot command himself will always remain a servant. But servant to what? Not just to impulses, but to a reality that others have constructed for you. The man who cannot preserve his vital essence remains forever dependent on external sources for validation, energy, and direction. He becomes a consumer rather than a creator, a follower rather than a leader, a victim of circumstances rather than an architect of destiny. When you master this fundamental force, something miraculous begins to happen. As our source material describes, you notice synchronicities, opportunities, doors opening that once seemed closed. People begin to treat you differently, not because you demanded respect, but because you embody it. This is not metaphysical, wishful thinking. It is the natural result of energy, conservation, and conscious direction. When your vital force is no longer scattered and depleted, it accumulates and intensifies, creating what can only be described as a gravitational field around your being. Others are drawn to this concentrated energy because it represents something increasingly rare in our world: authentic power that comes from self-mastery rather than domination of others. The ultimate paradox is this: by refusing to release your life force carelessly, you become more alive. By restraining your sexual energy, you become more magnetic. By disciplining your desire, you become more desirable. By valuing your essence, you become valuable. The world responds to you differently because you have literally become a different person, one who embodies the qualities that command genuine respect and attraction. But perhaps the most profound aspect of this transformation is how it changes your relationship with time itself. The man who wastes his vital essence lives in a perpetual present, driven by immediate impulses and instant gratification. But the man who conserves and channels his energy begins to live in extended time. His actions today create momentum for months and years ahead. He becomes capable of long-term vision, sustained effort, and the kind of delayed gratification that builds empires, creates masterpieces, and leaves legacies. This is why valuing your semen ultimately becomes about destiny, not fate, the passive acceptance of circumstances, but destiny in its truest sense, the conscious creation of your future through present choices. Every moment of restraint becomes a moment of authoring your own story. Every act of discipline becomes an act of self-creation. The source material culminates with this challenge: are you willing to walk the path of discipline, to honor your essence, to transform your energy into purpose, and to step into the destiny that awaits you? The answer will define the rest of your life. This is the ultimate truth that ties everything together. You are not just conserving energy, you are conserving the very substance of your becoming. You are not just resisting impulse, you are choosing consciousness over unconsciousness, creation over consumption, mastery over slavery. The world is waiting for men who understand this truth, not because they have read about it, but because they embody it. Not because they believe it intellectually, but because they have transformed it into lived reality through daily practice and unwavering commitment. The question that remains is simple but life-defining. Will you be one of them? Will you step into the fullness of who you were always meant to be? Will you become the man whose very presence reminds others of their own potential for greatness? The answer begins with a single decision to value what is most sacred within yourself. From that decision, everything else flows.